Tired of yelling, I knew it, at the screen with nothing to show for it? Turn your horror movie instincts into cold hard cash with Screen Bets, the first and only gambling site where you can wager on horror movie outcomes in real time. How does it work? Easy. Watch any horror film from our growing library of slasher, supernatural, and psychological spirit films. Place bets on crucial outcomes like who dies next? Is the creepy neighbor a red herring or the real deal? Will the final girl make it? Was it a doll? Was it a demon? Was it the divorced dad all along? You can win real money when your predictions come true. And for a limited time, use promo code POSTMORTEM to receive $10 in free cash for betting. Screen bets, because guessing the twist is fun. Guessing it for money is even better. Welcome to Movie Postmortem, where we dissect films of all kinds, whether they're good, bad, or those guilty pleasures we just can't quit. I'm Reggie Hill, and I'm joined by my nephew, Isaiah Brown. Together, we're here to examine what worked, what didn't, and why we keep coming back for more. So grab your popcorn because no movie is safe from the scalpel on Movie Postmortem. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Movie Postmortem. On today's episode, we will be talking about The Woman in the Yard, a horror film that just came out today. And so, before we get started, let me give you a quick summary of the film. After surviving a car accident that claimed her husband's life, Ramona is left to care for her two children in their rural farmhouse. Their lives take a terrifying turn when a mysterious woman dressed all in black appears in their yard, delivering ominous warnings and unsettling messages. This film was one that you picked, Isaiah. So can you talk about why you picked this film for us?
Yes, because it was either this or The Visit, which is a movie that he has gone on record saying he hates very much for one big reason. So I felt like it'd be pretty hard to give a non-biased review of the movie when he has years of hatred behind it.
Yeah, just a little bit of a disclaimer. I'll own up to this. The Visit is a film I've tried to watch twice previously, and I turned it off at the exact same moment both times. So I can't give a fair review of that film. So we decided to kind of switch out the film we were going to cover. We decided to do The Woman in the Yard.
We like doing new movies sometimes, and plus, I have a confession. Not only did I only go to the theater just because I like their hot dogs, but I'm finding myself addicted to Blumhouse like movies nowadays because I just want them to make a good movie again. And
Yeah,
so when I saw this, I was like, okay, please, please.
Yeah, I would say this is getting a little bit of, marketing attention out here. I've seen lots of trailers. I've seen lots of billboards. It's got a kind of iconic imagery of this woman draped in black sitting in the yard. It just seems very creepy. It's from Bloomhouse. And so this is something that I think people really want to go check out and, in hopes that it's actually a really good film.
Yeah. And so Ace reporter Reggie and Isaiah here, back from watching the movie recently. And my opinion is it's better than Wolfman.
Yeah, this is better than Wolfman. I felt overall, though, that I would say I was kind of disappointed by what was actually on the screen. And so my overall rating for this will be a 2 out of 5. I felt this is a film that has a very interesting premise, a very creepy premise, but it doesn't do enough with that premise. And I have a lot of kind of complaints about how the movie ends. And so I
Yeah.
feel that that's kind of the ultimate, take I have on this is that I walked away feeling unsatisfied by what they actually did on screen and that they could have done so much more with the material.
Yeah, I had the weirdest feeling while I was exiting the theater. I was just sitting there thinking to myself, like, man, I don't like this. Like, no, it wasn't like that. It was more like, man, I don't like this, but I don't hate it either. What is this feeling I have right here?
Yeah.
So I pretty much figured out what the feeling was. It was unsatisfaction.
Yes, and I remember at certain points throughout the story, and we have to kind of spoil this story, as we always say. We get into the nitty-gritty details, and so if you
Yeah.
haven't watched it, go watch it. Or if you're really not interested, read a plot summary because I think one of the things that's really up for discussion is how the movie ends and what the
Yeah.
ending might actually mean. And
And
so,
always, and as always, we are not a replacement for actually watching the movie.
exactly.
Even though we like your listen, most of the times we recommend you actually watch the movie, form your own opinion, then come back.
Yes, I always am a favor of that. Go judge it for yourself and then, participate in hearing our discussion, make comments online on Blue Sky and, have that conversation with us. But with this film, about halfway through, I felt that same thing you felt. I was like, wow, this is really not satisfying. I get where they're going. I just wish they were doing a better job of getting there. And then it kind of became boring. This is only a 90-minute film, but
Yeah,
it really drags. For anybody who's seen the trailer or kind of just listened to the discussion, summary that I just gave, you can imagine and you can guess right away who the woman in black is. It's not a secret that you think, oh, well, that has to be the mom herself, right? This is what we're doing. This is some kind of representation of the mom. It's her. That's exactly what happens in the story. They just take a very long roundabout way of getting there. And so it was like, yes, I predicted exactly where the film was going, but they somehow made it very unfulfilling and very boring getting to that point. And that's where it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. This is something that I felt was best probably as a short story. I feel like there's only
yeah,
probably like 30, 35 minutes worth of actual plot here.
that's what I felt too. I was like, man, this is a long movie for what feels pretty much like a short almost.
Even with that, it's not something that I hate. And so in this film, you see Ramona, she's recovering from the car accident that, claimed her husband's life. You get the idea that her kids are struggling, they're having bill problems. They live on this secluded farm that her husband wanted them to move to, but she's an artist. You get the idea that she's not really happy with it. And so she's struggling both mentally, and physically with, losing her husband and really the respect of her children. And when she sees, this woman sitting in the yard who tells her, like, today's the day, you've asked for me to come and now I'm here. And it's just a very unsettling, creepy, experience. This person sitting out in the yard, not doing anything to them. And then you just kind of see this woman dealing with this foreboding kind of presence that this woman is. And later, what you kind of realize that the story is about essentially is that the woman in the yard is a representation of the mom's, her really declining mental health, her depression, suicidal tendencies. And that's really what the story represents. I don't
Yeah,
hate that. I actually thought that's a good message. It's just the execution is really like underwhelming in my opinion.
yeah. I'll be honest with you. I honestly do not think that the mother would have been happy with anything, even the woman in the yard didn't show up.
Yes, exactly. And so, in many ways, it's a drama that didn't require the supernatural element
I
because it's
mean,
kind
it's
of
there,
about,
so
yeah,
like,
it's there. But a lot of the time, even once the woman shows up, then you have moments where, like, the woman, she's not a factor in the story. It turns into the woman talking to her kids about what really happened in the car crash secure their fall and all this other stuff. I was like, wait, don't you have a supernatural or creepy entity outside? Like, why are we doing family drama
yeah,
therapy right
yeah,
now?
exactly. I'll be honest with you. You can pretty much divide this movie into two parts. The first part of the movie is just there, and the second part is where things actually happen, and then you get disappointed.
We're got to get in our head of ourselves. I realize
Yeah,
we haven't
yeah.
actually started.
We're not doing our we're not doing our usual formula here, but just I'm just trying to get across my feelings of when I watched this movie, pretty much, because for the most part, I had no idea what I felt when I left the theater, and it took me the entire day to just digest and like get like, man, what is this?
Yeah, and that's where I feel like this is a film that tries to exist between two different genres or two different types of films. This is a film where you kind of have a supernatural demonic entity type of story, and another film where you have a person dealing with mental health crises and you're seeing this through their unreliable narrator lens. It kind of bounces back and forth between both of those types of things. I think that's the major problem with the film. I think it needed to pick a lane. I'm fine if it wanted to say, like, oh, well, this is all just a representation of this woman's, like, her depression, her desire, to commit suicide, and let's just stick with that. take out the actual more supernatural aspects, and we'll get to it. But my biggest critique of this film is the somewhat ambiguous ending, which I think is just a huge mistake to have. It's like you got to have a point where you're telling a story like this. Also, with this type of subject matter, you got to have something definitive to say. And I
Yeah.
think this film chickens out at the very end about what it actually wants to say.
This plot is pretty much something that we've seen multiple times before. You've seen it in Lights Out, you've seen it in Hereditary kind of, you've seen it in Annabelle kind of, you've seen it in the Babadook kind of, just pretty much how grief just turns into this monster, and that's what moves the plot along, pretty much. And so I was just so like underwhelmed because I was like, man, like I get what they're trying to do here, but like we've seen other movies do this better. So
Yeah.
like, what's like the interesting hook here? And the spoil is there's no interesting hook. The movie
Yeah,
just
that's
ends.
yeah, that's the thing. There is no really interesting hook. And I think that was a great comparison you threw out. I feel like this is just an inferior version of the Babadook. So it's like we've seen this before. I get it. I get where they were going for. So I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, oh, that's all you have? And it's not in any way better than what we've seen in other stories or versions of this. And so I felt like it needed to choose to do something different. And maybe that's why I kind of felt like it was bouncing between two different genres at one point, because it was trying not to be a complete mimic of a better film. But because of that, it's just this indistinct, unsatisfying product.
Let's get back to Fromley here.
And let's start off with any causes of celebration. And so I'll kick it off. And so
Yeah,
one of the things I actually really liked about the film, I thought the cinematography was really nice, and it's just really beautifully shot.
yeah,
Shadows play a very important role in the film because at some point later, for reasons that don't really make sense, the woman in the yard, her powers allow her to reach out and interact with things through shadows. So shadows, long shadows, developing shadows is part of the, plot. And so the way it was shot, it looked really nice. Just really nice earth tones. The cinematography I thought was really well done.
cause celebration. I think the actress that was the woman of the yard, I think she did a decent job.
Yeah, I feel that all of the characters did a good job acting, and it's just unfortunate because I don't think that it
Yeah,
was there was never an opportunity for them to really elevate the material, but their acting is sufficient in the
yeah.
film. It's just
The,
just not enough
the only
there.
yeah, the only problem for the actors in this movie overall is that they're the fact that they're stuck with this source material and this directorial like usage. Because there was a scene that I actually remember because actually it actually got me to squirm a little bit. It's spoiler warning. It's the scene later in the movie at the end where the mom is about to put the rifle like towards her head, about to shoot herself, and the woman in the yard is like shushing her, trying to calm her nerves and trying to like almost like serenade her to make her shoot herself. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
They actually got squirm out of me. For what the actors were given, they did a decent job with it. I wish they were given more, but nonetheless, they did decent. That the teenager that I can't remember his name, Tay, he uh he did a good enough job of being like boundary pushing and abrasive enough to where I was like, oh boy, if you don't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I just really felt it was unfortunate that they didn't have more of an opportunity to really show their acting chops as the story went on. Because towards the end, it became kind of so focused on just the mom that there were just a lot of moments that I felt that they dropped the ball by not giving them, especially him, more to actually do and to react to him, anyways. Okay, and so I think those are all of our causes of celebration. And so let's take a quick break and then we'll come back with our causes of death. Tired of loud prints, bright colors, and being told maybe you should try wearing something brighter? Us too. Welcome to Monochrome and Company, the world's most color-averse fashion retailer. At Monochrome and Company, we believe in one color, black, but it has infinite moods. Want to be mysterious? Black. Want to be sophisticated? Black. Emotionally unavailable, but still well dressed? Still black. We carry black hoodies, black jeans, black suits for funerals, weddings, and existential crises, black turtlenecks for your inner tortured artist, black socks that definitely match as long as you don't look at them too closely, and our best selling item, that one black shirt that you wear every time you need to feel something important. No pastels, no patterns, no seasonal colors, just pure, unapologetic darkness for your closet and your soul. And for a limited time, use promo code POSTMORTEM at checkout to receive a free lint roller. Because let's be honest, you're going to need a lot of them. Monochrome and Company, because black goes with everything, especially other black pieces of clothing. Okay, we're back. So let's now dive into our causes of death for the film. And so you can go ahead and kick it off.
Here's my first cause of death. Blumhouse, you spend more than just $5 on this movie. Like there were some moments that I could tell were so obviously cheap that I was like, man, they could have spent a little bit more on this.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the gift and the curse of Blumhouse is that they have kind of prided themselves on making low budget horror. Part of the problem with these types of films where because the budgets are so low, they don't really take time to flesh things out more. There are no secondary locations. And as you said, I think this is a story that warrants having more interactions with other people and more of an involvement with the husband in the background. And we'll talk about that in the script stitch up. And so yeah, like the cheapness unfortunately kind of shows.
Yeah. Now, honestly, if they would spend more money to get more actors in this movie, I feel like this story could be more believable.
Yeah, and that's where the isolation, the kind of plot contrivances they come up with, saying like, oh, they can't call anybody, they can't go anywhere. I feel that it weakens the story because you don't see the mom interacting with anybody else. Show me more of her, mental decline as it relates to her job, to other people she's interacting with, because it's kind of an attempt to be a very isolated, cerebral film. But again, this doesn't have to be. So it just comes across as very kind of cheap and isolated. It reminded me of
Yeah.
something that was streaming. Like to me, this is like one of the hallmarks of streaming films is that they have very small budgets, very small casts, and you get the idea that they just didn't want to pay for like extras or other scenes. So this to me
Yeah.
felt like something that should have gone directly to streaming.
Talk about the cheap moments a little bit more. It's just even though I thought the whole interacting with shadows things about the woman in the yard was cool, there are moments where she starts interacting with things that does not look that good.
Now, and I would argue, for me, I think that that's not even necessary. I felt like that's where they're kind of in between genres, where, okay, this is a demonic entity that only interacts with shadows, where they had a couple of decent effects with that, but otherwise just kind of turned into her knocking stuff off the walls or off the tables because of shadows. And it happens really late in the film. And then it doesn't really go anywhere. They're like, okay, let's run away from the light and shadows. And then, like, that's not really a major factor at all anymore because we're already in the third act by that point in time. So I felt like
Yeah.
that was a cool thing that was almost like part of another film.
Yeah, but just like for when it was there, it did not look like they spent any money with it. So like,
Now,
please.
for me, the biggest cause of death of this film is what some people might see as a very ambiguous ending. As we talked about earlier, the woman in the yard, kind of this manifestation of her mental illness, her desire to want to commit suicide, is spending the last, part of the film trying to get the woman to shoot herself with the rifle that the woman has saved for just this occasion. Just she's, today's the day. That's what the woman says to her, which is basically the woman saying to herself, like, today's the day I'm going to kill myself. And the entity is trying to convince her to do it. You see the woman like with the rifle aimed at her head, and then it kind of shows you that the woman decides not to do it. Her family returned because she had sent them away to go run and get help. And you get the idea that they're saying, like, yeah, she decided, like, I beat the woman today. Maybe, I'll still have to fight her in the future, but, I won today, and that's all that matters. Lots of the, kind of imagery in the film about the woman in the yard had to do with this being kind of a mirror image of the mother. And so at the very end, the closing shot, the mother, who is an artist, you see a painting. She's finally been inspired to paint again. And it has her name, Ramona, but the R is backwards. And in some people's minds, this can kind of indicate that this is the mirror world that the woman is occasionally dragged into by, the woman in the yard. So maybe she did actually kill herself and this is just some fantasy that she's telling herself, or a fantasy version of what happened. My take on the film was more that this is supposed to show that the woman didn't kill herself, and that she's incorporating this, acceptance of her struggles with her mental health into her painting. That's why she even spells her name, with a backwards R now. But I don't think this is something you want to leave ambiguous, just considering the subject matter.
Yeah, I'm gonna be 100 emoji got gov with you. I still don't know entirely what happened during the last bits of the movie.
Yes, I don't think that's actually surprising. I think it's very confusing because they kind of indicate certain things like, oh, well, none of the damage, the blood, the stuff that happened was actually real. Whether all of this is just a dream, it's not actually clear. And I think it's almost
Yeah.
completely up to interpretation what you think actually happened.
Once we got to once the woman in the art, she actually gets inside, which is like an hour into the film, pretty much. And once we once the mother just goes in this mirror dimension, wherever the heck she is, that's when my understanding of the movie just left. So I was like, okay, wait, she's talking to her husband now. So like, wait, where are we? So like, I already picked apart that the woman of the art is probably just her. So okay, whatever. But then once we kept going through that, I was like, okay, wait, we're back here. Wait, where's the daughter? Wait, where are we? What happened?
And I'm like, wait, they're kind of bouncing around too much between whether or not the demonic entity is real, or we can just deal with the fact that the mom has mental illness.
Yeah. Like, okay, maybe we're stupid, but like that's pretty much what we have with this movie. So like if you feel like being a psychologist and you can pick this ending apart, please tell us in the comments what actually you think happened here because we're stuck. Okay, yeah. This is another big cause of death for me because I'm so sick of seeing this. I am so sick of seeing like these entities, demons, ghosts, whatever, only do the bare minimum. I am so sick of it.
Yeah, that was again the thing I was disappointed by is that the woman in the yard literally didn't do anything but sit in the yard for about 75% of the film.
Yeah. All she did for the first half of the movie is move closer once the mom was starting to spiral a little bit downwards, which okay, that's fair. Maybe I get that if she's supposed to represent grief. Okay, fair, I guess, but like once she's inside the building, she really doesn't even do that much either. So like and once she's in, she still does the shadow thing, but I'm just like, why? You're inside. Just do things.
Yeah, most of what she does is kind of knock stuff off tables and off walls onto the floor. That's pretty much it when you really think about it. That was all that she did with her powers
Yeah.
was
And
knock
so
stuff over.
that's why I was like, well, coming back from theater, I was like, man, you could have taken that woman in the yard just out of this movie completely. You would just have the same story pretty much. Depression is just one of those things that sucks overall. And no one's depression like is gonna be like one to one with anyone else's. But like the cause of death I have here is that the mother is just like such a dislikable character to where once it gets to the point where she's like, okay, I want to live, I want to be there for my kids, I don't believe it. And not only that, but I don't honestly, I don't want to say that I want it, but because that sounds bad, but that's just what I feel, honestly. To where like the mother is such a character that could have been more to where it's just not. So
No,
when she wants to live at the end, I'm just like, yeah, I don't believe it at all. For what you've shown me, she should have shot herself.
no, I get that. I think that's a good point to bring up. I feel that same way because the thing that they do a poor job, in my opinion, of the film, they don't actually just show that the mom is depressed. They show her having, and I'm not a psychologist, so I don't want to use the wrong terms here, but they show her having violent imagery in her mind of killing her own daughter.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm
different
just
than
like,
depression. Yeah. So again,
yeah,
like she's
that's
at a
bad.
point, yeah, where it's not that she's depressed and she wants to end her own life. She seems to be in fear that she will immediately kill her own child.
Yeah, and not only that, but like there were like barely any moments in the movie where it shows like she actually loves her children.
Yes. And so this is not even a film about mental depression, mental health. This is about a person who has seemingly psychotic tendencies. That's different. You cannot paint all mental health issues with the same brush.
Yeah,
And I feel like
exactly.
that's part of the problem they do in this film is that they show this woman who is fantasizing about killing her daughter multiple times, that she's, like, okay, like you said, she could just brush it off and like, we'll fight the woman the next day. And like you said, making her unlikable, not showing her really go through any true journey. Again, like, I don't believe that she would go a day before she felt this way again, let alone like this is a
Yeah.
permanent fix.
For again for what you've shown us, I don't believe it at all. And that's why I said for most of the movie, I actually found myself agreeing with Taylor because like here's what happens. Like multiple times in the movie, it's like, okay, how about this? Let's just how about you and how about I go over to the neighbors and like use their phone or whatever? And she's like, no, no, just stay here. It's like, okay, well, how about we do this instead of just sitting here, just watching this woman outside? She's like, no, we're just gonna sit here together. I'm just like, what?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, and I think that's where it was clear, like kind of in her mind, making those decisions was her kind of self-isolating herself and her kids. Which is why like you didn't even need the power out or the him not being able to drive. It was just more like she's making excuses why she's cutting them off from everybody, which is people who have those types of conditions they can actually do. And so like that is actually probably a very realistic depiction of the kind of decisions she would make, and like you said, the kind of decisions her son would have to make for himself and his sister of saying, look, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to help you, mom. I know that you're having issues, but I got to take care of me and my sister. I got to try to figure out how to at least convince you to let us do something to make the situation better.
Yeah, and like this is something that sounds bad on paper, but once it got to the point where the son just like kind of locked the mom in that room and got the gun, is like was about to take a face off against the woman of the yard. I was like, you know what? Go ahead, because so far we've been getting nothing done.
Yeah. No, his proactive like nature actually made sense at that point in the story. And I really like that because it was like, okay, I'm going to do something. Somebody has to do something because otherwise it was just the mom in her mental state kind of scaring the kids. And that's where again, it's clear that there's not just a monster outside in the yard. There's a monster in the house as the mom. It's just like kind of
Yeah,
two different versions of her, like the outside just being kind of her more extreme state. And one thing they did that was kind of nice when the son falls asleep and then he comes to, and he sees the mom and he asks her what happened. She says, "Oh, nothing. Like I haven't gone anywhere." He sees that she's lying because he can see like dirt footprints. You can tell she's been outside. So you get the idea. Like at one point, I was thinking like, well, maybe like there is no actual woman outside. It's just her doing all of this stuff. But yeah, I think that's a good point to, take a break and we'll come back with our script stitch ups. Are you a recently widowed single parent looking to start over in a charming small town with a mysterious past? Do you need a big, affordable house that somehow isn't in the bidding war despite the market? Then you need Haunted Homes Realty. We specialize in helping single parents find houses with unfinished basements and tragic energy, attics full of dusty boxes and emotionally repressed ghosts, staircases that creak ominously even when no one's on them, and a backyard that looks like a kid is probably buried there because one probably is. Every home comes with a vintage mirror that should have been thrown away decades ago, a child's drawing on the wall that will predict your ultimate doom, and a complimentary warning from a nearby elderly neighbor who will say, "You know, this house has a history, right?" And for a limited time, use promo code POSTMORTEM to receive a free blessed candle because you're going to need it at some point in your stay. Haunted Homes Realty. We'll find you the house of your dreams. The nightmares come free. Okay, we're back. And so now we'll get into our script stitch ups. And so you can go ahead and kick it off.
yes. For the first part, we already hinted how like we felt like the mom's behavior in this movie was something that needed to be fixed, and so that's something we can fix directly here. Maybe this could be solved with another 10 minutes of runtime. Maybe I don't know where we put it, but I feel like you could fix that pretty much here with a little bit more time anyway. But show me the mom actually, even though she's in her really bad mental state to where like she's like so like really depressed, she's like has visions of killing her kids. Show me moments where she actually loves her kids. Because you cannot convince me that the whole ice cream thing was her trying to show that she loves her kids. I don't believe that for a second. That's just trying to get them to the dentist faster.
Yeah, and so I felt that they spend so much time kind of the first thing that came to mind is they spend so much time kind of wallowing in her depressive state that they don't show what she was like ever. You never see a good side of her as a mother.
Yeah, even in the flashback, she was just the same.
Yeah, you never see even flashback that she was ever happy, and I think that's a mistake. As we said before with these types of films, and I hate to always go back to, Smile, but it's the same thing with Smile too. You could see, that Sky was a flawed person, but you saw her wanting to get better. You saw better moments. You saw her working hard to try to be better. And
Yeah,
this
and even
film,
with even with in that movie when Sky was like like possessed, like days away from the demon taking over her, you still saw moments where she was still fighting.
Yes.
For
And so
this movie, in The Woman in the Yard, we see nothing.
yeah, you see none of that. And I think that's why it feels so unfulfilling at the end that she didn't actually really fight back. She simply, and in the film, all you really see is her glance over at the penguin that her daughter gave her. And so she kind of sees that and is like, well, that's what kind of snaps her out of it. Like, I'm not gonna kill myself, because she saw that penguin that her daughter had given her, when she sent her away. And that's it. But you don't really see her struggling enough to justify it. But yeah, I think that's a really good script stitch up where even in a flashback, show her being happy, show her being great at painting, show some good moments between her and her husband. They don't show any of that ever.
Yeah, or like even more, like when she's about to shoot herself, and don't just have her look at the penguin and just be like, "Oh, open ending, whatever." Show her like having a flashback to when her daughter or son came into this world. That would be like a genuine moment where she'll remember like, "Oh yeah, I don't want to die. I want to be a parent." This is something that I think of constantly because it's still good. But you remember the movie Hook with Robin Williams, where
Yes.
he finds his happy thought, where he's like, "Oh my God, that's my happy thought, being a father." That's something
Yes.
that could have worked here.
Yes, exactly. And I think that they had the framework in the film for that already. Show her visioning a future where she is there with her kids and they are happy. Like, show something. And I think this is where the film kind of failed at the end to use the narrative framework they already had to make it better. There's no point in pretending that mental illness, depression, any of that can be cured overnight. The woman says, the woman in the yard is gone. If she comes back, we'll deal with it. Then it has a very abrupt, kind of weird ending where even after you see her name spelled backwards in her painting, you have a flashback to get the same story that her husband was telling in her in the beginning. I hated all of that. Instead, just show us the next day, and maybe the woman in the yard is back. Maybe she's further away, and just show the woman, show mom going up to the woman in the yard and saying, "Not today." Because the woman is always saying, "Today's the day," and just have her say, "Not today." Like just
Yeah,
showing that this is a struggle. She's fighting it, but she's gonna keep fighting it every single
or
day.
even better, because again, this is something we also saw in the Babadook too. Like in the ending, where they're like do like a flash forward and they like set like a can of worms out or whatever for the monster. So like, okay, I can't get rid of you, but I'll just deal with you the ways I can. In this movie, show like a fast forward to maybe like a month or two, to where like she's like Taylor's like, "Ma, she's back in the yard again." So she's like, "All right, I'll take care of this." Just goes out. So like, "Hey, F off."
Yeah, exactly. Yep, something like that. Or even, I guess, they could have used their one F word there, or even just saying "not today," and you see the woman disappear. Like, yep, not today. So I felt like that's something that they could have done that would have been clever, used the existing framework, the thing that the woman kept saying, and it has a more conclusive ending about not just this story, but kind of, and again, I keep going to the real life stuff, like just the actual realistic nature of saying, like, yeah, this is a struggle this woman's gonna have to deal with for a long time. So that was one of the things that I thought for the script. It needed a better ending than just this very vague, kind of open-ended stuff. This director has directed a lot of other stuff, including action. Maybe that's not really a script stitch up. Maybe give this to a horror director and
Yeah, maybe.
actually have this done by somebody this is their wheelhouse as opposed to him.
Honestly, and this is probably like a double-edged sword, but give this movie to the guy that made the Smile movies. I guarantee he can make a better
Oh
plot.
man, I would love to see that. Like I really felt that was kind of the kindred spirit to this, like kind of halfway through. I was like, oh, this is kind of Smile-esque in that way in terms of like the subject matter where it's going, but it's just nowhere near as successful. So yeah, I would love to see this from the director of
Yeah.
Smile.
Uh, well, I say it's a double-edged sword because I I say it's a double-edged sword because maybe if he does take the reins for a movie like this, it might end worse because not worse as in like bad, but like worse as in there might be more disturbing images in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, the director of Smile wouldn't make this PG-13. That's one thing.
Oh, absolutely not.
But some of the jump scares that they have in the film even kind of reminded me of Smile. I was like, yeah, they're going for that same type of thing. But yeah, Smile is a lot more effective, film than this.
Yeah, and this is just something that's an. I'm so sick of this now because I was kind of like in the heyday of when jump scares started to become popular. But it's just like jump scares are the cheapest form of like scares possible. It's just like so bad. There's really no such thing as a good jump scare, really, because somebody described this before, and I 100% agree with this because jump scares are like you're at a comedy club and the comedian instead of just making a witty joke, he just goes up and tickles somebody and calls that good
Yeah,
comedy.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have
it's
some
just
cheap jump scares in this. One of which was just so ridiculous. When the boy goes up to the attic, for some reason the door just slams so loudly. I was like, that's so cheap.
yeah, like I didn't jump, but like but my little caveman brain, it got like a little reaction there. So I was like, oh come on, Nell.
Yeah.
So
But
that I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but maybe I can bring this into a stitch up here. But like, there are so many moments in this movie that could have been tense if they tried harder, but there just weren't. I feel like that could have been very easily fixed by more like more active writing team, pretty much.
yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to, the fact that this is not actually a horror director. It was surprisingly untense. So outside of the actual jump scares, even the creepiness, that real sense of dread, it wasn't there the way I expected. There's so much more that if you gave a true horror director this, I think they could have done so much more with it. It's just kind of a very limp film in that regard, where the woman just kind of sitting there, but not even in a way that's inducing dread or creepiness. Like it just doesn't feel as tense as it should be. And I keep coming back to give this to a better horror, director. Let's see what they can do with it. The thing that I felt most disappointed by with this film, I like the fact that this is a film that stars an entirely black cast that's not about a unique black experience. That's why I hate the fact that it's not really good. Because I want to see better films with black actors, actresses, where they could just show like, yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be about blackness. And this is just such a poor film in that regard. I was kind of disappointed
yeah.
by it from that reason.
That's why I'm also disappointed because like the father, I've seen him in The Hate You Give before, which is a movie that I actually do like, and he was a more prominent black character in that movie. Here he's kind of an afterthought, which is both on purpose and I feel like unintentional here.
Yeah, and that's where I always say one of the things that you shouldn't do in a film is start your story after a more interesting one. And I felt just with what he brought to the character, I would have liked to have seen more with him, even having him more as a character even before he died. Maybe then we cut to after he died, because I just felt like what they had left with just the mom, it wasn't interesting enough.
So pretty much, if you don't feel like watching this movie, which I will understand if you don't, go watch The Babadook and Lights Out, and you will know exactly what this movie tried to do.
Yes. This is an unfortunate, kind of downgrade on both of those films. And, this is not part of our narrative structure for the podcast, but I'll ask you. So, what are your thoughts about Bloomhouse? Can they recover, or is this them bleeding out slowly?
And if they spend more money on their films, then they could recover.
Yeah, like I wonder if Blumhouse is just gonna go the way of so many other kind of horror movie studios. We were like, oh yeah, I remember when they made good stuff, and then it kind of went down. I'm
Yeah,
not going to stop watching their films. They do have things that I'm literally interested in watching even later this year. But this is another miss from Blumhouse. I'll stay with my 2 out of 5 stars, rating for this.
yeah, I'm gonna bring my 2.5 down to a 2. I was being generous with that half star.
Yeah, and like Isaiah said, watch Lights Out or Babadook if you want to see this, done well. Even if you want to check this out, I would recommend waiting to streaming. There is nothing about this film that demands that it be seen, on the big screen, in my opinion. So catch it on streaming. It probably won't take long to get there, but thanks for picking this. It was a good discussion, and hopefully Bloomhouse will recover. That's it for this episode of Movie Postmortem. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us 5 stars, because even bad podcasts deserve a good review. Remember, whether it's good, bad, or just a guilty pleasure, every movie deserves a postmortem. Thanks for listening.
And as always, today's the day. We'll see you next time.